The agenda this week caught a glimpse of the future with a new method of editing human DNA. Got some words of caution for the future from Yuval Noah Harari. Examined the state of Ontario's housing market and reflected on the legacy of the guy on the five, Sir Wilfrid Laurier. The agenda's Week in Review begins with the podcast boom. Podcasting is kind of this funny, new, very hip, modern-sounding name. How is this not just radio on demand?
I think it is radio on demand, and I think that that's fine to say. I mean, I had always been in radio, in public radio, and I remember when we first thought about the idea of Criminal, I said, no, this has to be a radio show. I didn't understand how anyone would find a podcast, and I'd always, on a radio, there's some weight. I feel like you turn the radio on, and it's this curated entertainment in some way, so you think that it's important and special and good, and I was very scared about doing a podcast, and then I realized slowly that podcasting, the power of podcasting, that I still think we're just kind of seeing now, we're just beginning. It allows the listener the opportunity to decide, I'm going to turn this on, I want this now. And that means that choice that they've made, instead of being given something, as we are given on the radio, the choice to listen to something, I think makes a greater connection between the listener and the show. They're saying, I'm taking this 20 minutes of my day, and I'm going to care enough to listen to Criminal. Well, that's a great responsibility that I feel then, because I think to myself, well, I can't let them down.
Can I make a confession here?
Yes.
I play your podcast at double speed, so it only takes me 10 minutes to listen to
Never
you.
tell me that. Never tell me that.
Is that a terrible thing to fess up to?
For a podcaster, that's a little death, but
at least 1.5 speed.
Yeah.
Don't do double, right? At least,
but that's fine. I mean, you're allowed to, and that's the greatest thing about podcasting. Anyone can make a podcast.
I can listen to twice as many if I do it twice.
You can listen to it as whichever way you like, and so that's why people are feeling so empowered by podcasts. You don't need anything fancy. You can have an iPhone and talk to your friend and put it up there, and there you go. You have a podcast.
You have this very kind of lovely public radio persona about you, and you have that public radio voice when you do your program. I'm kind of imitating a little badly there. You have this kind of ebullient personality that sort of bursts out there, and I wonder how much of the personality of the host do you think is the attraction for why people tune in?
I knew, Alex. I was thinking the opposite of Phoebe's beautiful voice. I was like, oh God, it's going to be like this Australian, like, oh, hey guys, how's science going? Yes, that is my voice. And I grew up in a very large family, so I have a loud voice. I think the personality does matter a lot with a podcast, because you are choosing, as Phoebe said, to select. You have this kind of bond with the host in a way that kind of like your friend. I know the podcasts I listen to, you do feel it is a little bit more intimate, your connection with them, because you've selected this, you're spending the time with it. And if you don't like them, and because with podcasts, people tend to go on tangents a little bit, they start talking, they have these little in-jokes that develop over time, sort of over 20 episodes, 50 episodes, and then you sort of get in line with that. And you like it, or you don't like it, because it can be quite indulgent. So either you get on board with the host or you don't. So I think personality has a really big role to play, possibly more than in radio. Yeah.
Andrew, I want to get a little kind of, philosophical and touchy-feely here. And that is, obviously none of this existed when I was a kid, and we listened to the radio, and a lot of us had that shared experience of listening to the same thing at the same time, and therefore it was a shared experience. Podcasting is, in some respects, absolutely a metaphor for our times, which is everybody in their own space, in their own time, with their earbuds on, shutting out the rest of the world. It's a solitary experience. Is that worse as a result?
I mean, I think for me, and you're right, it is a lot like, now with on-demand television, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, people go to different, instead of the water cooler, you go to the message board, or you go to social media, right? Where the nice thing about podcasts is that you have, I think the connection that you have with them is so much more heightened, because it's so, the hosts are so personal. You think you're kind of friends with these people. So the people that you connect with who also like this podcast, you feel a stronger bond with them. So maybe not everyone's listening to the same thing and having a huge experience, but for you and this other person that you find, I mean, sometimes, Lindsay said that she likes the How Did This Get Made podcast, and I just want to pull her aside and be like, did you listen to this episode? Did you listen to that episode? So it's we're all kind of in our individual pods or whatever spheres, but we're all having a shared experience that way because we're opting into the show that we like, if that makes sense.
Lindsay, let me get you on that. Certainly there is something to be gained. You can listen to whatever you want, whenever you want, at the speed you want, and stop it when you want and pick it up later. But is something lost as well?
You know what? I think they're just two different mediums. So it's like, what do you get from TV and what do you get from radio? I worked in radio and like now I'm diving into the podcast world. And I think I used to work in live radio, which is amazing. And it's like a way to get direct information. And when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I turn on the radio. Like I don't want to listen to a podcast. Obviously CBC. Obviously. Listen to my colleague. But
that would be Matt Galloway.
That would be Matt Galloway.
That would be the lovely and talented
the wonderful
Matt Galloway.
Yes,
he
my
is
co-host.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so I listen to that every morning because I want to get information. I want to feel connected to my community that's around me and that's immediate. And it's great for news. But I don't know if podcasting has cracked the code for kind of daily, immediate news yet. Like that's something that you don't have. What podcasting does have, though, that is even more pronounced than in radio is intimacy. You know, you feel like people often say to CBC radio hosts, they're like, oh, I feel like I know you already. But podcasting, I feel like that's times 100 because you're usually listening alone. You're listening when you're giving your full attention to the podcast. It's right in your earbuds. And so it has this kind of power and connection that I think is sometimes even more profound than radio.
What application of gene editing are you concentrating on in your particular research?
Gene editing is a very exciting technology, and we're focused on several things. One, we try to develop the technology so that we can make it even more powerful, conquering some of the challenges that still face it. At the same time, we're applying it to understand how the brain functions and how genetics or genetic differences underlie different forms of neurological disease.
And what are the neurological diseases or disorders that you particularly are interested in dealing with?
We're focusing on neuropsychiatric diseases and also neurodegenerative diseases. So things like autism, schizophrenia, and Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, Joanne, I want to go to you now in Massachusetts. Another area where gene editing is being explored as a way to sort of revolutionize human medical treatment is centered on using CRISPR on pigs. So start by telling us about that research.
Yeah, so you know, there's already been a lot of research that led up to this research to show that pig organs might be sometimes used and are already sometimes used in human transplant. And so there are some limitations to that that the CRISPR technology is able to really address. So one of those is to quickly remove many of the proteins that make the human reject pig tissue. And the Church Lab actually at Harvard went about and did one of the largest gene editing single experiment changes, making changes in multiple genes at one time in the pig to get a little closer toward using the pig for an experimental animal. And also, one thing that's already been done that I think is interesting is a human pancreas has been now you know, grown in a pig, and some gene editing used to make that more amenable for transplant, getting toward a cure for diabetes. And so that's, I think, pretty exciting research. And the thing about CRISPR is it's very fast, and it allows you know, research for cures to be accelerated.
And as we see Fung in the band along the bottom of the screen, it's CRISPR, C-R-I, that's not a misspelling, just so everybody knows, C-R-I-S-P-R. Why is it called that?
CRISPR is a name for the way these systems look in the genome of bacterial cells. CRISPR stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeat.
I am amazed you
so
remember
it's an acronym for CRISPR. And it really means that if you look into the DNA sequence for these CRISPR systems, they are repetitive, and then they are clustered in the same place. And also there's little gaps that are fixed width in the genome.
Good. Let's go to the UK. Heidi, I want to get you into this because in a recent National Geographic magazine story, it looked at how CRISPR could be used to battle mosquito-borne diseases, including malaria and, of course, the very notorious Zika virus, which has been so prominent in the news lately. And I want to read an excerpt of that story and then ask you a question. Sheldon, if you would, let's put this up. Anthony James, a molecular geneticist at the University of California, Irvine, is acutely aware that releasing a mutation designed to spread quickly through a wild population could have unanticipated consequences that might not be easy to reverse. Quote, there are certain risks associated with releasing insects that you have edited in the lab, he said, but I believe the dangers of not doing it are far greater. All right, can you just pick that apart first of all? Do you agree with this notion that it's better to do as opposed to not to do?
Well, I think, that quote is a really excellent way to frame a lot of the debate around one particular application of CRISPR-Cas9, and that is the use of CRISPR-Cas9 to create what's called a gene drive. So, a gene drive is essentially a mutation or a form of a gene that can spread itself through a population very quickly, much more rapidly than normal. So normally when you think of gene editing, you think of editing in an individual organism, even an embryo, what have you. When you talk about designing a gene drive, you're talking about trying to remodel an entire species, really. So some people, if you go back to what Feng Zhang was saying earlier in that great description with Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, some people have called a gene drive essentially a search and replace function, but not just for one document, but for an entire species. So that quote from Tony James really sums up, I think, both the promise and the risk of this, right? That, the promise, the idea of getting rid of malaria. I mean, a world without malaria or even with significantly less malaria, that's amazing. That's an incredible thought. It gives you goosebumps to think about it. But the idea of reshaping an entire species and an ecosystem, that carries a lot of risk. Those give you goosebumps too, but in a different way.
Well, follow up on that if you would.
So it really is this balance.
Yeah, follow up on that if you would, because I wonder if in your travels you talk to people who wonder whether or not we are moving too quickly or too headlong into real-life practical applications of stuff that is pretty far out in some respects.
Well, one thing to say, I guess, about gene drives is that there's been some work on them to show that it may be possible to do this, but they are still some time away. I mean, I would say years and years away from actually being ready to be deployed against, say, malaria. So there is still time to have some of these discussions, and there are a lot of discussions ongoing about whether or not, how you should design these, how you should test them, should you even test them at all in the field, and those sorts of things are still going on.
The rise of artificial intelligence, even without genetic engineering, is already threatening of pushing more and more humans out of the job market. So within 20 or 30 years, we may see the rise of a new massive class, the useless class. Just as the Industrial Revolution created the urban working class, so the new revolution will create the useless class. People who are not just unemployed, but unemployable. And the social and political implication of that could be catastrophic. You could have billions of people without economic importance and without political power.
Those are the seeds of a revolution.
Or the seeds of a very frightening dystopia.
Yeah.
But again, I want to emphasize it's not a prophecy, it's just a possibility. If we don't like this possibility, now is the time to start doing something about it.
So is this what you refer to when you write, the rise of humanism also contains the scenes of its downfall?
In a way, yes. I mean, we pursue all these technologies like AI and like biotechnology in the hope that they will serve humankind and they will give us better health, happier lives, and so forth. But the result may be to make most humans redundant. If you want better health, so you create a kind of artificial intelligence that understands your body and your brain better than you can ever understand them, so that it can provide you with better health. But once you have an AI that understands you better than you understand yourself, you are becoming redundant. The AI can do everything better than you can, and then we have a world in which humans are not the most powerful and the focus of attention. Humans are becoming just yesterday's news, the previous stage of evolution, and now there is something new.
So if that future happens, the end of humanism, if you like, what's going to replace it? What could replace it?
One of the things that could replace it is an ideology which we can call dataism, which is already becoming dominant in places like Silicon Valley, which says all of existence, the whole universe, is just a flow of data. And all phenomena in the universe including tomatoes and giraffes and human beings, are just different ways of processing data. For thousands of years, humans were the best algorithms in the world, the best data processing system in the world. But now we have better data processing systems. We are creating the kind of Internet of all things, and this becomes much more important than humans. And we may well see within a few decades authority shifting away from humans to these algorithms.
If the scenario you have just posited happens, what's the output of the new world of dataism you have described?
The output of humankind is the creation of these superior algorithms, a superior data processing system. What will be the output of that system is by definition beyond the ability of humans to understand or to imagine. Our brains are a data processing system that evolved in the African savanna 70,000 years ago. Now we are creating something far, far more powerful. By definition, our old-fashioned, obsolete algorithms are incapable of understanding what's next.
How old are you?
40.
So you're a young guy still. You'll probably be around to see some of this happen. Does that excite you or frighten you, or what does it do?
Well, it's happening already today. I mean, if you speak about authority shifting from humans to algorithm, it's all around us. If you navigate your way around the city, you no longer rely on your own intuitions and knowledge. You rely on your smartphone to tell you where to go. When you go to buy a book, you rely on Amazon. Very soon, you'll rely on Amazon and Google to choose your dates and to vote in the elections. So it's not some distant future. It's already happening as we speak. Personally, I try to be neither optimistic nor pessimistic, but realist, to see what is happening and to understand that every change, every big change in history has both positive and negative potential. There is almost no case of a big revolution with just positive or just negative potential.
How do you change the culture so that young families find it just as appealing to live in an intensified urban neighborhood rather than in a sprawling suburb?
I think the culture's changed, and actually young families do want that kind of environment. I think the problem is not that, the problem is actually a supply problem, is we do not have family-friendly housing in our condominium buildings or our purpose-built rental, new purpose-built rental, because the development industry hasn't figured out how to do it yet, and has been reliant just on past history on providing ground-related housing and greenfield development. And that supply is shrinking. You're seeing that in rising housing costs. And what we haven't seen is then the increase in supply through intensification of actually better housing for families and better housing for people with a range of income needs.
Cynthia, has the change of culture, of mindset happened yet?
I think it is happening. My students all expect to live in a condo when they graduate, for example. I think, as a starting point, I think that we can look to cities like New York, London, and Paris and other world cities, as Toronto is becoming a world city, to see about how does a big world city house its families, and how do we, what lessons can we learn from these other cities? So I think there's valuable information there.
Your students expect to live in condominiums for a while.
I poll them,
right?
And so they all expect to work downtown and live in a condo downtown, and then they expect, to get married and have children, and then move to a ground-based house.
See, that's still the expectation, isn't it?
I believe that is still the expectation, yes.
So get to it, Joe.
Well, I mean, one of our challenges is even when we're trying to bring in ground-related housing in an intensified environment, we're still finding challenges. I mean, the urban townhouse is sort of the form that's finding its way in the city, and there are many, many neighborhoods who are enjoying $2 million neighborhoods who do not want to see $35, $500,000 townhouses go up. And so you're going to have these struggles as you try to find the right place for those kind of family-friendly opportunities. And then the second part of it is ensuring that there's a school system in place, because a lot of these neighborhoods, what we're seeing now, that people are not, there was this belief, empty nesters would move out of their homes. Those homes will become available for the next generation of families. That's not what's happening. People are staying in their homes. They're renovating their homes for the second part of their lives. And so what were typically your turnover communities with good schools in the neighborhood have now become older communities, established neighborhoods, as we like to say. and they're not operating those housing options. So now when you try to bring in new development to those communities, those residents who've been there for 30, 40, 50 years are very, very clear. This is not going to be in my neighborhood.
John, I'll give you a sign of the times. I mean, you probably know the former Petrocan station that was at Jarvis and Dundas that they've taken down. They're putting up a condo there now, and there's a sign out front saying, if you buy here, just so you know, there's no schools in the area. You're going to have to bus your kids wherever they go. It's a sign of the times, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, those are not, those signs have been going up in Toronto for a long time. I just want to make a point about the last comment, which is that in a city like Toronto, half the residents in the city rent, and many of those are families with children. So we know that people live in high rises, have lived in high rises for many years, and those expectations are completely different than the expectations of people who with means. So. Again, it's a question, I mean, we keep saying this, it is a question of supply and providing the right supply that meets needs of young families, for example, who may not be able to, find the down payment.
Okay, we got a couple of minutes left here let's talk rental. If you wanted to, there's people in this town today, with people in cities all over Ontario who say if you really want to make apartments affordable, put strict rent controls back on. What do you think of that idea?
Well, rent controls, rent controls for the individual tenant are helpful in terms of their personal finances. I mean, at the industry level, I mean, it was very damaging to investment when they came in the 1970s. And so part of the shortage of rental housing in Ontario at the moment is as a result of the fact that the rent controls basically came in at a time when there were very high rents, and it sort of killed the market. So I think you have to be very careful with that policy. I think you have to look at opportunities that that are easy. Like I spoke to a developer earlier this week who's building on the vacant land in the area, that's owned by by a developer or by a property owner that has 3 large apartment buildings that date to the 60s. He's filling that land full of townhouses that are going to be rented, 2 and 3 bedrooms. They're less expensive because the land has been paid for. So there are ways of kind of looking, getting past the supply issues, and then you get to better cost structures.
Okay, let me save a minute here for Cynthia. You talked already about a shelter allowance to help make renting more affordable. What about rent controls, hard caps on rents? What do you think?
I think that, as you said, it does have strong benefits for the family that is in there, but it does have the unintended consequence of having the landlords less willing to build rental if they're not going to be able to raise their prices.
Laurier loved Parliament. He loved Parliament, and when he became Prime Minister, he made sure Parliament lasted well into the small hours of the day, of the morning. He would, and of course, and the opposition hated it. Here we are at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're still, and the old man, well, yeah, he's in his 60s, late 60s. He's still sitting there saying, give me some more, give me some more. I want to hear some more. It's 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. He dragged sessions into the summer. He loved Parliament. He loved Parliament, and he loved to talk. So,
well, and it's fascinating because a lot of the time, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, there were many times where he gave these long speeches that were just, he didn't write them before, he's just speaking in this manner.
He would just ad-lib them?
Well, he had his, like any great speaker, had his stump speech and certain lines, but what I found so impressive, and remember this is the days before the internet and StatsCan and all that stuff, how he would tailor his speeches to, if he visited, one of the speeches in my book is in Thunder Bay, which back then is Fort William and Port Arthur. And he goes in, he's 70 years old or something when he arrives. And I'm 50 and I have trouble, reading some of these speeches, they're so long. He was 70 and he goes into what is now Thunder Bay and gives 2 totally different speeches with local content for each part of the town. And they're like 90-minute speeches. Since last October, the Sunny Ways speech has been quite, famous because Mr. Trudeau invoked it when he was elected Prime Minister.
The current Prime Minister, a year ago.
Exactly. And Laurier delivered that, and this is in no way, no criticism at all, to farmers in Morrisburg, Ontario. And they listened. Education back then well, Patrice would know better than I. But what would the average education of the people in that crowd have been? Elementary school. Yet they knew they were in the presence of greatness, and they listened. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'd like to think today that if our prime ministers delivered 90-minute addresses, I think Canadians would listen.
We have a guest who's just about to join us. Look what the cat drag did. The 21st Premier of Ontario is here. Here's Bob Ray. Bring a chair up. Have a seat.
Someone take offense at that. Not me, not me.
Let me just check with the control room. Is Mr. Ray mic'd and good to go?
Yes, I am.
Okay, in which case, let's put you to work right away. We're talking Sir Wilfrid Laurier on the 175th anniversary of his birth. We've just come to the Sunny Ways speech that he gave in Morrisburg in Eastern Ontario. What do you like about that speech?
Well, I think that, first of all, Laurier, you have to go back to the style of oration, the style of speaking that was part of the pre-television, pre-radio culture when people would really let loose, when you'd have, picnics and parades and people would talk for a considerable period of time. You go back to the Lincoln-Douglas debates in the 1850s, people waited, tens of thousands of people waited in Illinois and in a fairground to listen to the debate. It would go on all afternoon and into the evening, and so the whole style of political discourse was completely different than what we see today, with the kind of 30-second clip or 15-second clip or whatever it is. You know the business as well as anybody. So really, it's quite a different presence and presentation. But on the Sunny Ways, I think the thing about the Sunny Ways, to me, that's important is perhaps a little different than what some people see. To me, it's you got to realize that this is a man of real substance and real intellect, and he understood something that MacDonald also understood, which is there's intellect and there's substance and there's showmanship. And Laurier was a showman. He was, he was a public character. So was MacDonald, and
they could perform.
They could perform. He could perform. He could lay it on. And it was a great comment by one of his supporters saying, I love it when he bamboozles me, because yeah, it's all baloney, but he does it so well. He just lays it on. He lays it on perfectly.
I love that Bob brought that up because
but the Sunny Ways thing to me is he understood it. He understood that part of his projection of himself was as a positive person who engaged with people. But he went through moments of doubt and melancholy and personal challenge and huge difficulties. He didn't let it show. He was not somebody who let it show, and frankly, neither very much was MacDonald. But MacDonald had other outlets, but
Yes, MacDonald did enjoy the odd champagne or scotch or whatever. And that is our Week in Review. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety. They're all on our website at tvo.org, and you can sign up for our podcast by going to tvo.org/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit tvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.